So welcome everyone. Today we are here for our second session of this series of Back to School, focusing on trauma-informed principles to practice. My name is Leora. I get to host today's session. I'm based here in California, and I am the School Mental Health Field Director for the Pacific Southwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. We're so grateful that you are joining us. And today's focus in our trauma-informed principle to practice sequence is empowerment. We are in this whole series on taking, again, these trauma-informed approaches and practices and moving them into actual, what could this really look like and feel like and sound like?
Thank you all for being here. I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to share really valuable partnership work that has been transformative to my own professional identity over the course of the past 3 years. I hope you'll find some inspiration from it. So we'll get right started. We're going to be talking about a 3-year, currently going into its 3rd year partnership, which we have titled Our World of Strengths of Photovoi University Practice Partnership. I am a licensed psychologist, licensed educational psychologist, and nationally certified school psychologist. I'm a professor of school psychology at Sacramento State University. And Jeremy Green is a licensed educational psychologist and nationally certified school psychologist, and he is currently in a doctoral program, so he'll be Dr. Green soon, whoop, whoop. And he is a practicing school psychologist in this school district. And like he said, our roadmap today for the presentation, we're going to really try to emphasize the opportunity for our students to speak. So we have Jeremy Green, my partner and wonderful colleague, will be presenting on the background of our partnership together. Then we'll be describing some of the key components of our first year working together in 2021-2022. This was the year subsequent to major school shutdowns as a consequence of the COVID pandemic. And there was an immediate need to help young people come back to school and make sense of such a transformative life experience. And so that is when I met our student participants for the first time, Hadia, Bernadette, and Tristan, all of whom will be speaking today. Then in 22-23, we worked together again, and we worked on, we centered strength-based psychological assets. So focusing on what is right and well and good, and looking within our lives to find those places and spaces and people that amplify those strengths for us. And then we'll also be going over our future directions for our partnership for this academic year, which has just recently launched, though you wouldn't know it with our students because they are deep in it already. But so we'll be talking about our future directions. And so I will hand it to Mr. Green, Jeremy, to talk about the background to the partnership.
This partnership developed between me and Megan in terms of our institution. So Megan being a part of Sacramento State, me being a graduate of Sacramento State, and also the current, school site I'm at in terms of Natoma Specific Pathways Prep MP3, which is the school within, the Natoma Unified School District here in Sacramento County. So we always had mutual interest in student voice, youth participatory action research, and really trying to empower the youth to be able to use their voice to articulate the things that they see wrong within their society, within their school, and also to build up that social emotional well-being, because that's what it comes down to. Really trying to have our students feel as good and empowered as they possibly can. So in collaboration, we were able to receive a grant, which we're very thankful for, with Anchor University through the Sacramento, State University as well, to help fund some of the, the projects and some of the materials we'll talk about moving forward and so forth too. Keys to university public school collaboration. So this is with any organization. As we know, organizations can be complicated. They can be multi-layered. We know personalities as well. So the complexity of bureaucracy, one of the things that me and Megan, I feel like we both do really well, is building that trust, sharing that vision, and acknowledging what is the, the root thing that we're trying to do with the, in terms of this work. We're trying to improve student lives in terms of both K through 12, the college setting, and beyond. Some of the things we did in terms of resources is really trying to discuss What's the best time to have these meetings? Can we find a space? So we had some wonderful partners at MP3. I got to shout out Miss Annie Jones, who was allowing us to use her classroom after school to build upon this work with the students who will share in just a second. School policy management in terms of our administrators, allowing this work to happen on their site. So we're appreciative of them, as well as the basic funding, which related to that grant that we spoke about just a few seconds ago.
The grant was funded through the Sacramento State University Alumni Association, which was really interested in building partnerships between the university faculty and community organizations. And they were very supportive of the idea of working on youth mental health in the local Sacramento region. So we were fortunate to receive that funding. So that's a little bit of a background. Conceptual, theoretical, and methodological foundations. I recognize that this is not a research talk, but there are some important considerations for doing youth participatory work in schools. First, we work from a adolescent identity development theory that tells us there are some really important and critical components of the adolescent developmental stage. Questions that adolescents are working on are, who am I? Where do I belong? Whom can I trust? Those are key adolescent developmental stage concerns. So we do pull from adolescent identity development from Erickson, as well as Marcia's identity development, which really we're looking at youth developing a concept of thinking about their identity and knowing what they want to do with their futures and with their future lives. And then we are also looking at self-identity. This is the idea that young people and adolescents are working towards developing an integrated idea of who they are, what assumptions and constructs are they forming as central to their identities going forward. And this youth voice work is really founded upon that. Also, we are working specifically through a psychological well-being frame. Now, I see Leora's. I hope I really, we're working from a dual mental health framework, which says that well-being is not simply the absence of pathology, but it's the presence of positive psychological assets and strengths that exist both within the individual as well as within the individual's environment. So we center youth well-being, life satisfaction, and we'll be talking to you a little bit about the model of well-being that we use for this project. We also draw from Gloria Ladson-Billings' work on narrative and portraiture and storytelling. We build from narrative therapy work from Michael White, for example, where we're really working on telling the stories of our lives in order to make sense of what we have been through, to hear how others experience it, to reintegrate the stories of our lives into how we see the world and how we move forward in our lives. Debbie Thomas wrote, "All sorrows can be born if you put them into a story." And that is an important concept that we move from. Then the photo voice and student voice components of this work are central to the methodology that we use. There's quite a bit of literature on methods for student voice and participatory action research. On the continuum from a diluted student voice process to a really saturated student voice process, we have moved into the center of that, maybe a little bit more towards a saturation point. We will talk to you about future directions for how we're going to move it to even a deeper saturation towards youth leadership and participatory action. For our first year together, like I said, the first work we did was around collective youth sense making around their COVID experiences. This was the initial need that the school had. It allowed for a door opening to the work happening. I and Mr. Green and several graduate students from Sacramento State University, practitioners in training, school psychology practitioners in training, came to the school campus and attended the morning sessions that the students have. They're like homeroom sessions, and explained what we intended to do and how the work was going to be created and our vision for working together for 12 weeks. And we recruited 14 students across 9th and 10th grade. So that was the first year we worked together. We had 4 graduate students working with us that year, 4 school psychology graduate students. I'm going to hand this over to Jeremy to tell us a little bit about what we did together.
So one of the first steps we did was really trying to articulate in terms of that photo voice aspect. So photo voice is very powerful. So we set up, questions around, where I feel most like myself, where I feel like I belong, and where I feel like I'm a member of my community. So these kind of prompts, you can flip them around and so forth. But the main idea is for students to look in their environment, their community, and try to capture images that really articulate those key questions that we asked during that time. So why photos? As you know, we know that adolescents, we all are on Zoom right now, right? Some of y'all probably, I hope you're not on no social media right now looking at Instagram, but I ain't gonna judge you if you are. But the reality is we are all visual folks, right? So adolescents as well, they relate well to that visual medium. It also reduces the demand for verbalizing abstract ideas and metaphors. So again, sometimes, if we do this with other students, right, we might have some neurodivergence where, that expressive language skill might be, something of a struggle. So to capture in your phone, a lot of people have phones, we give iPads as well, or things of that nature for you to borrow. To capture those images can be real powerful and have these students be inclusively involved in this kind of work. Again, creative expression, we know imagination, we know all the research around being creative and how it helps us to problem solve, to be global citizens, to critically think. So photos also relate to that as well. A more natural viewing of the self from the outside. So again, to get ourselves outside of ourselves, that egocentric kind of perspective that unfortunately sometimes we get stuck on in terms of a society, right? Taking us outside ourselves to see the community we existed in and how do we influence that and they influence us as well within the community as well. Like we're talking about in terms of the self, that visualization of the past, present, and future, and how do we move forward in the best way we can. So the show met the protocol, so adding a little structure to it. So not just, taking the pictures, asking questions. We're having the students in a community kind of listening circle, as you can see on this image right here with some of the grad students that we work with some of our students in the initial stage. It's showing the picture. Nobody explains anything around the picture. The person shows their picture related to the question and people reflect on it. So each person in the group views the picture and reflects on these key questions. First thing you notice about this picture, oh, it looks like you clicked a little too quick, Dr. O'Malley, but it's all good. We'll click back. What do you see? What story do you imagine the picture is telling? And how does it make you feel, or what does it make you think about? After everyone's commenting in the group, the student then shares what the picture means to them. What was the reason that I had this picture, took this picture in relation to the questions we phrased? And every other student in the group shares that photo and the procedure follows the same set. So again, we have that iterative kind of process going on as well. And then we have peer witnessing. So once again, the key theme of this presentation is witnessing, right? So after everyone is shared, the group is facilitated through these next questions. What are some of the things we see in common amongst the pictures that we presented right here in this space? Has anything changed about the way you think about the pictures now that that person who was the photographer has shared what it means to them? And based on what we shared, is there anything we would want to share with others in terms of our families or teachers about the images we captured? Based on those questions we talked about, or whatever questions you framed in this photo voice kind of exercise.
The next phase of our work involves ecological exploration. So in the first year that we worked together, we gave students the prompt, when you think about how you were affected by COVID-19, what influenced you? Consider different contexts of your life, like home, school, and other spaces, people, ideas, or rules that influence you. You may consider positive things, negative things, or things that were neutral for you. So here you see Tristan in this picture. You see an ecological model. Some of you may recognize Bronfenbrenner's ecological transactional model of human development. Now we're getting real heady. But what Tristan did is he made it his own by thinking about, within the context of COVID, what were the aspects of COVID at the different levels of ecology in his home environment, his online school environment, his community environment that had some impact on his life experience during the period of COVID. Here are some examples from students. Maybe the text is a little hard to read, but I'll leave it up for a second so you can see. So you can see how different students conceptualized what was going on in their immediate home environment, their school experience, and their community. We found that students were able, with this framing, to really think about broad level policies, school level policies, community level policies that played some role in their well-being during that time. Our next piece was social biography and storyboarding, now sometimes referred to as the photonovela in our Photovoi literature. We asked students over the course of several weeks to answer these questions. We gave them a storyboarding visual image with blank squares where they could sketch out visual images for their answers to these questions. So describe the time when you first learned about COVID, how it impacted your life, how it impacted school for you, what were your thoughts and feelings, thinking about where your life is now. Now, remember, students had already gone through all of this and they were back at school. So we were kind of looking in the rear view and trying to make sense of the whole experience. And what do you want the adults in your life to know about how COVID has changed your life?
So after they, created their, script, what they did was then put it into action. So we know students are tech savvy, right? So utilizing Jamboard on Google. So simple enough, just going on Google, downloading Jamboards. The students took various images that articulated some of the questions we talked about. How did COVID feel during that time? What did you learn from COVID? How does it feel to be back in this school space? Taking images and placing them on the Jamboard. So again, not only showing what they have felt, but also explaining it afterwards as well. So part of YPAR, in terms of the way that we do it, is we want adults to have buy-in, to let the students' voices be heard. So we were able to invite various staff members into the space to listen to the students, and also with some, some prep work, letting, the staff know, look, let the students lead. You're not going to, say, well, you could have done this better. Really cultivating a positive experience where they are there as the active listener with these key questions. I noticed you included this picture phrase. What does this mean to you? What ways did you find your COVID story was similar or different from other students in the groups? So again, going back to that original group setting where we had those questions and bringing staff into that listening circle as well, into the space. What can I do? So this is the YPAR part. What can I do to support you and other students? So again, we've articulated what we've experienced as students. Here's what you can do now to help us moving forward. And what can the school do to support you and other students as well?
So here we have our first opportunity for students to chime in to tell us about their takeaways from their first year working on this project. The 3 students we have here today were 3 of the 14 who participated in the first year. Can you tell us just a little bit about your takeaways from the first year when you participated, when we focused on COVID?
Yeah, totally. So the first year I came, I was a sophomore in high school. And this was sort of, to give some context, this was mainly around the time that we came back from quarantine. So we were still wearing masks. There was still COVID that we were very worried about. And I think that was a major thing that happened that a lot of people have forgotten about and that we have really sort of put behind us because, we want to look forward to the future. But especially for us teenagers, it was during a very crucial developmental stage in our lives. I had just turned 14 when quarantine had started. And I think that the developmental sort of delays that I experienced were pretty universal for teenagers around the world, really. So I came in and I really had done a lot of suppressing of my emotions for a very long time. There's a lot of not expressing things, not diving deep into things, really not engaging in introspection very much. But I think this group really, really highlighted, or it really, really helped me open up again and really understand what the effects of quarantine was. And it allowed me to really, well, it was the first opportunity for me to engage in psychology, which was a huge thing for me. But the main thing, it really aided sort of a hole in the plot of my life.
Thank you, Tristan, and thanks for your resilience in terms of finding a technological backdoor in. Thank you. Bernadette, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. So my first year, I was also a sophomore in high school, and I would say in the beginning of my high school years, or like before this program, I wasn't really like fully aware of like mental health, or like just like my mental health especially. But then throughout my sophomore year, I started to realize how like anxious I would get, how like mentally drained I would get, and so I decided to join this. And then doing all of our jam boards, like it definitely showed me like a huge reflection of how bad my mental health was during quarantine. And it made me just like be able to talk about it with other people and just self advocate for myself in order to get help. So yeah.
Bernadette, thank you so much. And we have Hadia.
Hi, my name's Hadia. So personally, I learned about how like COVID impacted us and just being able to review and seeing how it made a change to our life, to my life. And it was just nice to reflect on it. Personally, I learned how COVID impacted me in a little bit of a positive way, and how I improved throughout COVID, even though what you mostly hear is like the negative effects, and there were negative effects, but for me, it was a time to just self-reflect and see like the change I'm making in a beneficial way as well. And it made me realize that you never really truly understand the importance of something until it's gone from you.
Thank you, Hadia. Once again, I'm really impressed and pleased that the young people are brave and courageous and coming on this group. So I appreciate all your support to all audience members. Okay, so we're going to transition to talking about our second year together in 22-23. We had a smaller group this year. We have the three students that are with us today, Tristan, Hadia, and Bernadette. And then we had a graduate student in school psychology, Isaac, who's entering his second year of training this year. And then we had a undergraduate student who is interested in pathways towards becoming a mental health clinician. So he supported this work, and we'll share a little bit about their impressions towards the latter end of this presentation. So let's bring it back to the students. Why don't we start with Hadia this time for why you decided to come back the second year?
Yeah, so personally, I'm not an open book and I never really have been. And so having this group and environment really helps me push out of my shell and talk about things I wouldn't necessarily open up about. And I think what I really like learned was that we all come from different perspectives and come from different walks of life. And a picture to one person can mean something totally different to another person. And I kind of learned that while like opening up and showing these beautiful people about my life and things I've been through.
So for me, I have tried to like share about my mental health with like, some of my classmates or some of my like friends. And to be honest, I was shut down a lot and it just wasn't validating for me. And so I just thought like high school was like pretty toxic. And so joining this group, I know that this is just like such like a safe place that I could trust, and like especially that we all have like different experiences, and everyone who participated, I just know were like respectful, non-judgmental, and just mature. And so yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about why I came back last year. So the main thing, the more practical thing, is that I was interested in psychology, and there was an AP psychology class when I was a sophomore in high school, but you had to be a junior to take it. but when I actually became a junior, they got rid of AP psychology. So this was sort of a main motivator for me to really engage in my love for psychology at my school. We don't have a psychology class exactly, and this was something that was absolutely perfect for me and my interests. And I think it was a huge opportunity for me to learn about mental health and psychology. I think I was really interested from this in this from a young age. My mother actually had a pretty severe case of OCD when I was growing up, and it always really confused me. Like her kind of obsessions were about germs, and I remember having to shower like 50 times a day, or having to throw my clothes in the wash, after going into the garage because I was dirty, and all these sorts of like little things really sort of inspired my like curiosity for it and really understanding how to help people like that. I think there's truly a way to help everybody, and I really want to pursue this path in order to sort of fulfill that sort of childhood dream of mine. And yeah, so that's my thing.
Okay, so for year 2, we're moving out of talking about the COVID experience, and we used the construct of co-vitality. I finished my doctorate at UC Santa Barbara under Mike Furlong. Mike Furlong has been doing work in the area of positive psychology for a couple of decades. The 3rd edition of his book, edited volume, The Handbook of Positive Psychology in the Schools, was published last year, I believe, 2022. And there is a book chapter. I wrote a book chapter in there on student voice. So if you're interested in that, and also in that book is a couple of chapters on this conceptual frame for positive, the co-occurrence of positive psychological constructs in young people. So in the what's called the co-vitality model, you might recognize the word comorbidity, the idea that psychopathology tends to coexist. Individuals with one DSM-5 diagnosis are likely to have more than one. The counterbalancing construct is co-vitality, the idea that positive psychological assets tend to coexist, and the sum is great. The sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? So in the co-vitality model, which has been validated through empirical survey research, you have belief in self, belief in others, emotional competence, and engaged living. For each of those primary constructs, you have secondary constructs. So belief in self includes self-efficacy, self-awareness, and persistence. Belief in others is family support, peer support, school support. Emotional competence, emotional regulation, self-control, and empathy. And engaged living is optimism, zest, and gratitude. So what we did is our initial work together, we had our student participants complete a survey, a self-report survey on with survey items tapping into each of those constructs I just shared. At the time, we were using an application to do this that is currently shut down, but is being reorganized and reset. So eventually we'll be able to share additional tools for you to access that online. But the online system allowed for each student to receive a strengths profile similar to this, where it defined the strengths, it defined what strengths were really highlighted for that individual, and areas where we can continue to cultivate or grow in that area of strength. So Mr. Green's going to come on and share with you how we moved from the survey completion into the Photovoi work.
So yes, so basically what we did was, in our little smaller group, really, thinking about, okay, what is this belief in self, this belief in others, engaged living, emotional competence? So taking a lot of those elements from co-vitality and having those kind of group discussions with, our grad students, with myself, with Dr. O'Malley, and really trying to build a framework about, okay, what does it all mean? We then shifted back to like that photo voice discussion. So using those same protocols that we talked about in relation to COVID, this time we are taking it and relating it to that co-vitality. So weekly co-vitality prompts, which we'll talk about, as well as engaging once again in that showed method. So where do you see, happiness or zest for life? What pictures represent that? And having that same, again, here's the picture. This is what I think it represents. Having that person who took the picture, explaining what it represents to them and going forward in that way. And again, repeating the same steps that we talked about from the 2 years prior, developing jam boards around these concepts related to co-vitality, inviting adults back into the space. And this particular, version of it, we did it online, inviting them back into the space, as well as debriefing with the students on how did that feel? Because one of those key parts about the YPAR is not only the students having a chance to have their voices heard, but also talking about how did it feel? How did it impact you positively or anything of the sort and so forth too. So again, some of the prompts that we focus on. So every other week, we define as a group with the students leading the way, the strengths, concepts, and sub-concepts that are attached to that co-vitality rating scale that we talked about. So emotional competence, breaking it down into these, narrow band measures of emotional regulation, empathy, and self-control, having the students define it in their own words, as well as visually as well. Engaged living, that gratitude, that optimism, that zest, belief in self, that self-awareness, that persistence, and that self-efficacy, and belief in others. So peer support, school support, and that family coherence. And after coming about and agreeing upon these definitions of each concept, they were also the students given, that prompt about taking pictures throughout the week that represents those key sub-concepts that we talked about and bringing it to share with the group again. So bringing it back to that photo voice loop that we talked about earlier in our session.
So Tristan was going to share this slide, but he had to leave a little early. So what I'll share here on Tristan's behalf is that what you have is the offered definition of each concept that's offered by the researchers, Dr. Furlong and others. So emotional regulation, for example, was defined by the researchers as effectively expressing one's positive emotions and managing one's negative emotions. Now, the young people sat together in a group and said, well, what does emotional regulation mean to us? From a research perspective, this is referred to as cognitive interviewing. Instead of when we talk about surveys are very adult directed because the adults are the ones that determine what's going to go on that survey and what the students are going to answer. So we moved to cognitive interviewing as a first step towards youth voice to say, okay, well, we have some ideas to share with you, but what we really want is to understand what this means to you. How do you engage with this? So what does this mean to your life? So what you see here is for emotion regulation, empathy, and self-control, the definitions that were offered to the youth, and then the definitions they came up with. And you can see that there's some really interesting insights here, like on empathy, some of the young people mentioned it was like opening your heart. For self-control, there was inhibiting natural urges, being stronger than yourself, all really interesting insights into what this means in terms of the teenage life experience and the adolescent experience. So for this next one, we are going to have Hadia share.
So for this section, it is called Engage Living. The 3 words for this one were gratitude, zest, and optimism. And the offered definition for gratitude is sensing thankfulness that arises in response to one's benefiting from some kind of transactional means. And the definitions we kind of came up with are gratefulness, conscious thankfulness, feeling, giving appreciation from acts of kindness, and being appreciative and aware. And the second word was zest. This was a word we all, to be honest, had a field day with. And the offered definition for this was experiencing one's life in the present moment as exciting and energizing. This is also the word that stuck out for me the most throughout this whole experience. And our definitions were happy and content in the moment, a satisfied state of being, living well in the present, and just being in the moment overall. And then the next one was optimism. and the offered definition is expecting the occurrence of good events and beneficial outcomes in one's future. Our definitions that we came up with for optimism are feeling that good things will come, having an open mind, and just thinking about a positive outcome.
Belief in self, I'll go over, and then Bernadette will go over our final construct. The belief in self was self-awareness, persistence, and self-efficacy. You can see what the offered definitions were and some of the key things that the young people connected with, like in persistence, they connected it to the concept of growth mindset, which is really interesting. Carol Dweck's work. Self-efficacy, they connected that to being respectful, feeling capable. For self-awareness, being cognizant of their inner beliefs, thoughts, behaviors, and motivations. They noted a process of change, with self-awareness being the first step in that process. I hope that the audience here is struck by the depth of thinking and the complexity with which the young people brought added language to the concepts. That's hard to do, and they really came through with it in a really thoughtful way. And remember that after they defined this, as Jeremy mentioned, after they defined these, then they went out with these definitions looking for these things in their lives for the following week, and they took pictures as they went. So that was the next step. Let's hear from Bernadette on this next one.
So during the last week, our thing for belief in others, the 3 words were peer support, school support, and family coherence. And then peer support, the offered definition was appraising the caring and helpful nature of one's relationship with peers. And we kind of just shared how some of, like, it could also mean acknowledging the kind of relationship you have with your peers, being aware of those people around you, the relationship you have with them, and acknowledge the presence and feelings of others. And just like, even if they're not a friend, there are like expectations for each other to just like be respectful and be mindful that, and just be mindful of, like, you know, others' opinions. And then for school support, the offered definition was appraising the caring and helpful nature of one's relationship with teachers. And our definitions were basically just engaging in social and academic bonds with school officials, including direct support from academic skills and indirect support for personal life. And just being able to receive uplifting energy and advice from teachers. I think a lot of us in this student voice group like feels like we have such a strong like school support system, and so that was something that we talked about. And then family coherence, the offered definition is appraising the caring and helpful nature of one's relationship with family. And we talked about how it's just the supportive, loving relationship amongst like your family members, and just like healthy, caring interactions with family, just consisting of like honesty, kindness, and togetherness, just leading to like a more stronger relationships with them.
So now we'll go to phase 2. Jeremy shared with you the image of the different phases of this work. So we've talked about phase 1 being conceptual definitions and then taking photos. And the next phase is organizing those photos into a story. And we used the Jamboards to do that. Tristan was going to share his Jamboard first. He had to leave. So what I'll do is I'm going to actually move forward to have the next student share, which I believe is Hadia. And then we'll have Bernadette share. And if there's still time at the end, I'll go back to Tristan's to share some key concepts.
So the first couple words I chose were gratitude, zest, and optimism from Engaged Living. These were like my favorite words that really stuck out to me when I went out, and it was difficult to kind of like be more in tune with, well, what is gratitude in my life? What is zest in my life? What is optimism in my life? So just some key concepts. So as far as gratitude, zest, and optimism go, the top couple pictures are of me and my family and friends during graduation season. and just for graduation season, and it's just nice to be with your family and see your loved ones kind of like move on with their life, open a new chapter. And then on the bottom, nature is also something that brings me a lot of zest, gratitude, and optimism. In the bottom two pictures, I'm in Santa Cruz, and then in that picture where I'm holding hands with someone, that's actually Bernadette. We sat on top of the rocks and we were just kind of talking about life, and just we were having a really good time, and we were definitely in the moment. It was something we both really needed. And zest has honestly been my favorite word, not only because zesty and stuff, but just in general. I really like the idea of just living in the moment. And I'm someone who craves like adrenaline rushes. I love going to concerts. I love doing all that stuff. Especially as a teenager, that's kind of the age I'm in right now. So the top pictures kind of represent that. You can go on to the next slide. Self-efficacy. I feel like I've always like struggled with this. And then in these photos, I kind of push myself to try something new, and just explore the horizons. And then self-awareness. I feel like sometimes I'm overly self-aware, but in these photos, I realized that like when I'm becoming overwhelmed, it's okay to just step back and just look at the bigger picture of things. And then on the bottom picture, it's when I took my mask off for the first time at school, because I wore it for a really long time, because it wasn't that I cared about COVID. I just kind of didn't want to show my face that much. So then I found the confidence to do that. That made me kind of self-aware as well. And then persistence. These photos show persistence because they're both times that I just kept going, and just looked forward. The top one is after I was done with all my AP exams. I treated myself to ice cream, and it's just a big celebration. And then the bottom one is after I was done with finals. Me and my friends had a good laugh, a good swim session, and it was just really relieving, I would say. And then so what I learned from all of this, as far as participating and creating my project goes, is that self-reflection and finding the beauty in the small moments is really important. And I definitely put myself out there more and had a positive mindset. And if I didn't, I don't think I would be doing this project, but because I like learned the confidence to share my stories, that's the reason I'm able to share them with you all. And then what I learned from sharing with my peers, I learned vulnerability, and just realizing that we all go through different challenges, similar challenges, and I'm not alone. And I kind of came to terms with things in my life that I wouldn't normally share. And then from sharing with the adults, I tend to be cautious, especially from a young age. I don't want to say the wrong things in front of certain adults or things to be blown out of proportion. And then seeing my peers open up, and confide in the adults more also helped me.
Thank you so much, Hadia. I really appreciate you taking the time. Our next presenter will be Bernadette.
Okay, so for engaged living, for gratitude, zest, and then optimism. For gratitude, I kind of just like put pictures of me showing gratitude and giving gratitude to the people around me. Like I give a lot of letters and words of affirmation. I also like to cook, and so I just I give some food and like some of the stuff I make to my friends. And then for zest, I would, so like it's again a moment where you feel happy and alive, and sometimes it is in a specific environment or something. So one of them is during prom. Like that was really fun. I'm not really a person who like goes out a lot, or like I don't really like dances, but that was fun. It was good. And then in the middle picture, that's Hadia. It's also at the beach. She was talking about, and so yeah, we were definitely in the moment. We were just talking, just sitting on the rocks, and it was just like just taking in the nature and like the wind. Like we weren't on our phones or anything, so that was nice. And then on like the bottom right, it's kind of just my draw, like I was just doing my art stuff, and then I was playing like a Disney movie, and so like that was like I was in my zone. And then yeah, optimism. This is my little cousin, and I was going through some like family stuff, but like my cousin being there, it's just it brought a lot of like joy and happiness to my family during a tough time. And emotional competence, emotional regulation. I kind of just talked about like just my like so during that beach moment Hadia and I had, I was overthinking a lot during the trip, and so this was just a great way for like me to just calm down, just breathe, and move on. And then for empathy, it's basically like taking in others' point of view and opening your heart. And so the letter is from a teacher, and I don't know, that was just like, he was leaving his last year and it was kind of sad. And then the mug on the math mug, I realized that one of my math teachers were like being mistreated a lot by students, and they seemed stressful, and so I just knew that they liked coffee and gave this funny mug. And so yeah. And self-control. So it's basically just having like discipline, willpower, and strength. And especially for me, I would say mentally, like I so I took this picture of the high school campus that we go at, and like whenever I feel very stressed or overwhelmed during class, I kind of just ask the teacher, like, could I just go on a walk, just get my thoughts together? And so yeah, that's one way I calm myself down. Next slide, please. And then belief in self. I'll talk about persistence, just persistence this time. I did a picture of like an art assignment that I did, and a picture during prom, because like during the time, so for the picture, during that time, I was behind on a lot of my work, and there was a lot of family stuff going on. But then once I was able to like focus and like finally like get my work done, it kind of shows like a lot of persistence, especially with that artwork. And then with prom, I think I was also going through a hard time that week, and I was like studying a lot because it was I think it was AP exams, and I just pushed through it, and I did not want to go to prom, but I did. I just pushed through it. I stepped out of my comfort zone, and yeah. And then what I learned from doing this project, even like some pictures are very simple. I shared this one picture of like just me in a car. I didn't think much of it. Like I was like, oh, I just took this kind of for fun because of like the scenery. But then when I shared it out in my student voices group, I realized there's like a huge story behind it, and like there's this huge meaning that like relates, that connects to like my family. And then I just felt more comfortable and honest, and because everyone else was sharing, so that made me more comfortable. And then also looking back, I also like just appreciate looking back at the pictures I took for this project, because I don't usually take pictures, and I kind of learned that there are moments in my life that deserve to be captured just like really quickly. And like I should share it with some people. And then something that I learned from sharing with my peers, that this is a safe space, opening up, and no one was scared. Like what Hadia said, I learned that like some of our struggles were similar, and it made me feel understood. And it also like made me happy to see that like my peers don't like feel ashamed in opening up, because I don't. And then from when we presented last time, it was just nice like hearing how proud they were of us, and someone said like we took it into consideration and took it seriously, as in like we put a lot of thought and a lot of work into this. We didn't just like brush it off, or we didn't just like quickly did it. And like yeah, we took our time.
The third phase is adult witnessing. In this phase, we provide to adults, in this case, we're talking about the school adults that the young people presented to. We give them a little bit of some guardrails, right? We ask them to describe to young people how the photos resonated with them, wonder aloud about possible meanings associated with the photos and try to notice connections across the students or even across different photos. The idea of narrative work is that the young people are offering their narrative and hearing back what are other ways or other thoughts on how to interpret. And you heard from Bernadette that she offered a photo to the group, and then after hearing how others interpreted it, it gave her a new view or a new insight into that interpretation, or to see it another way, which she could choose to accept or choose to decline to accept. That's her choice. And then on the don't side, we try to remind our adult witnessers, that's a new word, guys, witnesses, to avoid critiquing, criticizing, pontificating, or preaching. These are things adults learn to do quite well. So we try to put all of those instincts aside when we're holding the space of being an adult witness to youth sharing. Some key principles to selecting adult witnesses. One, allow your students to do the invitations. Allow a discussion with your students about who to invite or who they might be nervous about inviting, particularly if it's school adults. They may have had a bad experience with a school adult and are nervous about that adult attending. So that's actually, that tension is actually a really nice place for a therapeutic conversation around what are you expecting from that adult? What are you nervous about from that adult? How can I support the conversation with that adult? Or maybe you find at the end of that conversation that it really would probably do more harm than good to invite that adult. So we're going to leave that person off the invite list. 2, we're going to select individuals that are going to be our adult witnesses who are able to comply with those norms that we just mentioned. So we're going to ask adult witnesses to make an agreement that they're going to comply with those norms before they participate. And so last year, we in the first year that we did it, you saw pictures from when we had the school adults come and be the witnesses. And so these young people, Bernadette, Tristan, and Hadia, had the experience of hearing their school principal reflect, their assistant principal, teachers, school counselors. And then last year, we did the adult witnessing session via Zoom, similar to what we're doing now. But we had people from the community come in. So we had, again, the school counselors and administrators from their high school, but also other researchers interested in student voice or practitioners interested in student voice. So we had about 25 witnesses come last year. And we heard a lot of good things from both the students' experience of the witnessing as well as the adults who witnessed. So Mr. Green's going to share with us about phase 4.
Pretty much is, debrief and reflection. So asking the students, how did that all feel? So after the share out, students come together without, all of our adult, witnesses that we had come into the space and really just reflecting on it. So taking that reflexivity, really reflecting on how did this work feel to you, being able to share and be seen as the expert on your life experiences, on your narrative. So the common reflections that kind of came up, and I would feel the same way, that initial nervousness of like, oh man, we having, to talk to these adults, they're going to be listening to us. What do we have to expect? That, healthy anticipation, that healthy anxiety in terms of, that kind of nervousness. But afterwards, one of the things that the students, and they can, also, kind of reflect as well, is just that pride, wow, like they really learned something from me, that erasure of the hierarchy. So like Megan was saying, it's very natural for us in the school setting to be top down, authoritarian, see students as not, complete beings able to articulate their feelings and their experiences. So to allow students to speak to this point, you feel that pride, you feel that deepening of that collective identity, like, wow, we all did it. Like, I saw Hadia was giving props to Bernadette in the chat, just seeing like, wow, that was an amazing experience, and building that bond to take it beyond that space. Reflecting on that story salience and interpretation. So again, what parts of our story seem to resonate with the other folks? What did we see that they really, really took to heart, as we see in the chat right now? Some of y'all are taking some of the, the narratives that our students have shared and really are reflecting and really feeling it and giving the props. So I appreciate y'all as audience members. what parts of this story did others offer, that in terms of new and different interpretations for? So what were they hearing when they saw our jam boards, or seeing and feeling? What did it bring to them up to the forefront in terms of their prior experiences, in terms of being teenagers? So reconnecting with that, that child that they used to be as adults, right? And if you were to rewrite your story, what, if anything, might you change in terms of like, what did we present, or what would I change about that? So again, always that iterative kind of cycle where we're going back and forth, just repeating that process of self-reflection, which we know if we're developing critical thinkers and global citizens, we all need to do that every single day. So coming up this year, so the hope is we're going to move into even more of a participatory action model where we have Tristan, Bernadette, and Hadia take the lead in some of these spaces that we're going to try to cultivate. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to work with our partners at NP3 to see if we can take it to that next level and so forth. Again, that's the plan. That's what we're hoping to do. New students, we're going to try to select them through this universal screening model of co-vitality. And we're also going to incorporate other technologies in terms of text message reminders, in terms of our group meetings, in terms of, what the prompt is for the week. And as strength folks, it's prompts that we brought into the table, onto the table for this last year and so forth too. So again, those are the goals that we have. Those are the things we're going to work on and so forth too. And, regardless, we are here as supporters for these students for life. I really appreciate each and every one of them that participated. They did amazing.
Just a little bit of feedback from our graduate students who participated. They weren't able to attend today, but they did create their own jam boards. And so the image you see here on the right is an image from one of their jam boards. So what we did find was that the intergenerational experience, right? So you had high school aged young people, college aged young people, and graduate school aged young people. And we found that the interactions between those levels was really rich and for everyone involved. And so here we have a couple of quotes. There's value in sharing and constructing narratives together with people of varying ages and experiences. I learned that psychological strengths can actively bolster learning about themselves and the world and where they stand in it. And then students were able to speak on complex issues and their experiences when they are in a trusted environment. So those are some of the insights gained from our college age and graduate school aged students. So let's turn it to our students again. Hadia, would you like to go first on why you plan to participate again this year?
So the reason I plan to participate again this year is the idea of having a group of people that I could trust and confide in is really special to me, and it's not something I want to lose. The connections that I've built over the last 2 years are irreplaceable, and the lessons that I've learned will have a long-lasting impact on me. Before I graduate, I would like to help other students have that same safe space that I did, and hopefully mentor them and show them that being open and vulnerable isn't as bad as it seems. I myself have seen that transition from freshman year to senior year and how much you change, how much you evolve, the highs and the lows. And I would like to help my peers go through that and just teach them that it's okay to go through those things, because I didn't know it was okay.
My reason for planning to participate again this year is similar to Hadia's, but like I just really want to advocate more about this student voices group this year. I want students, especially like underclassmen, to join, because this program, I feel like it's so special, and like it's a really great safe place for students, and they deserve to have that, to like be open, to be vulnerable. And I would say I'm usually an open book, so with me being a facilitator this year, I like don't mind sharing a few things to like establish and let other students know that this is a safe space for them. And just like with this process and like working with these people, I just have so much respect and admiration for them, and I'm just like excited to like have more people like join this year.
I'm sure I speak for Mr. Green and I in saying that we are thrilled. I feel like in some ways we have lightning in a bottle here in terms of the 3 young people that you've seen present today, how engaged they've been and how committed they are and how much they want to take what they've learned and help other young people in their school community. So we're just so thrilled about that. If you're interested in engaging in this work, if you're particularly interested in the co-vitality construct and related tools, you can find links here on Dr. Furlong's website that he maintains. He will, I'm sure, if he's given permission to, he'll host this video on his website as well, because he really is enthusiastic about the interpretation of co-vitality through a youth voice and youth participatory lens. So we are pleased to have him as a partner. And at this point, Leora is going to facilitate a Q&A.
Throughout this process, I've never, like I said in the beginning, I've never been an open book. So if this opportunity was presented to me like 2 years ago before this group, I don't think I ever would have said yes. I don't think I ever would have had the courage to. So I think just like stepping back, I'm able to realize how much I've grown, even in speaking and having the confidence in speaking. That's never really something I've been courageous about. And I know Bernadette has a similar experience. So I'm just proud of us.
Amen. Beautiful. Bernadette, any new learnings, affirmed learnings?
Also with just like opening up, like I am honestly I was a very introverted person, and like I would never talk about like how I'm feeling, or like I would kind of just push it aside. But with this group, like I definitely a lot of self-growth. I like self-advocate for myself more. I am not afraid to reach out for help. I am like I'm always willing to share and like be honest of how I'm feeling. And yeah.
Those both the stepping into nurtured vulnerability, right? Not just like a nurtured risk, not just like throwing yourselves out there, but knowing that you were going to be held and appreciated when you did is evident and seen and heard. And I hope that we'll send you what the audience is saying in the chat. But I think that that courage to say like, I need support, not only in myself, but from my peers and from adults who will stand by me in times of unzestiness. Hadia, can we say that? There's zestiness and there's unzestiness.
Yeah, I think we can say that.
Okay, great. New journal article coming out by Hadia, unzestiness and Bernadette. I think that's really foundational. I want to ask, move it to Megan and Jeremy. When you think about if there are folks on the line who might be really inspired and are inspired, maybe like 1 or 2 tips, green lights, yellow lights, red lights, about taking this model to their work sites.
Someone had asked during the conversation about doing this work with younger children, and I think I would love to spotlight Jeremy for a minute or two before we're able to close, so he can share his insights from taking this down to a developmental level for elementary age students, which has its own opportunities and challenges. But a few insights, I'll just share a couple. This work, I'm so proud of this work. I'm so proud of these students. I'm so proud of Mr. Green. Anybody who works in public education knows how spread thin you are, and to be able to find the time and motivation and mental space to engage in value-based, value-driven work in the context of all of the different rules and red tape. You know, I just want to like really honor Mr. Green for doing that, and for I would say for anyone in the space who doesn't work in public schools but is looking to work with public schools, finding your Mr. Green is really, really, really important. A champion at the school who can help the external provider. In this case, I'm coming from Sac State. I'm coming with great resources, right? I'm coming with graduate students. I'm coming with grant funding. I'm coming with the ability to communicate and publicize and bring these opportunities. But if I don't have someone at the school who's willing to open the door and willing to say, please come in, let me help you find a way, then I can't get anywhere. And so I would say my key is find your Mr. Green.
Love it. All right, Mr. Green, now that we found you, what are some of your hot tips?
Well, that's very zen of you. I appreciate it. So, I mean, the reality is, like Megan says, they may be pushed back because we know people are busy, especially in the education system. Education systems nowadays are ran like organizations, they're ran like corporations, they're ran like big business. So it's go, 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 keep it moving, data driven in terms of numbers and things of that nature. But I think what gets lost is that kind of, authenticity when it relates to trying to help students feel the best that they can be, trying to get them to see the path that they want to take moving forward. Never, trying to cultivate them into our image, right? But also allowing them to ask those questions, to seek out who they want to be. Who do they see themselves being in this ever so complicated but still beautiful world? So for myself, as you can tell, I'm a poet by nature. My family's from Louisiana, 225, got to represent Baton Rouge one time. I come with that heart. I come with that passion. I come with that drive to really be like my mama, Pecola Green, Hardnett Green would say, a change maker, to really bring something to the table for our students that they can last a lifetime. And sometimes that puts me in, peculiar positions in terms of having to justify the work I'm trying to do, trying to convince folks that this work is powerful. When I hear these, wonderful students who are leaders in themselves, it motivates me to keep on fighting and keep on pushing forward. So the tips are, accept rejection. That's going to be part of that pathway, right? We know rejection doesn't feel good, but rejection is a natural part of life where we can take that, flip it, and build some positive experiences from in terms of that grit and in terms of that resilience, right? Also, showing them the research. I mean, Dr. O'Malley, like she was giving me props, I give her flowers too. She's a brilliant, brilliant person. She has the research, she has the knowledge and the ability to connect with people of all backgrounds and types and histories and so forth. So having that research, having that resource, there's a little bit of that politics, right? In terms of showing how is this going to work for the institution. But again, if it helps the students in the end, sometimes we got to do politics as usual. And so, yeah, I mean, just be prepared for pushback. If you're lucky, you have an organization, you have an institution, you have a school district that sees the value in this. That's not just jumping on trends in terms of student voice or, SEL or what sort or PBIS in terms of positive behavior, interventions, social emotional learning and so forth too. You have people that really say, look, our students, they need this, and they are bringing such a wealth of knowledge and just an articulation to their experiences and so forth too. And we're doing the same thing with the younger kids. I did it for my dissertation project, for 4th and 5th grade African-American students, really addressing what does it mean to be Black at their school, in their neighborhood in the United States in these days and times, and what can adults do to really help them and make it a more welcoming community for themselves and their families. Again, I'll try to, talk about that when I'm done with the dissertation. But the reality is, a lot of the things that our high school students shared, those students shared not in so much a photo voice aspect, but a creative writing aspects. Like I said, I do poetry on the side and so forth too. So that was kind of my wheelhouse, is letting the students create and letting them have that enriched discussion where a lot of those centralized themes started to come into play, similar to what our students are saying here today.
The most important piece is that you walk away knowing that there are so many ways to be in this world. And one of the invitations that I'm holding is the power of witnessing. And we know that traumatologist Peter Levine says all the time that the experience of trauma is running around the world trying to find a witness. And what a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous demonstration of what it can be to be trauma-informed by offering students experiences to witness themselves, each other, and us being privileged in this journey. Huge applause to Hadia, Bernadette, Jeremy, Megan, applauso, applauso. We're so grateful, and I'm grateful for all of you showing up